Chris Pradle is the Executive Director of Community Homeworks, has served in this role since July of 2020. The organization's mission is to stabilize Kalamazoo County homes and support homeowners through critical home repairs, empowering education, and tool lending. The organization was founded in 2009 to serve as a solution to the housing crisis and preserve our community's existing housing stock and strengthen home ownership. So with that introduction, I would like to hand it over to you, Chris.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Nikki. Thanks for the chance to come join you all here on this kind of rainy Friday here. But yeah, I really appreciate the chance to connect. And hopefully today we can kind of make the connection between the work that you're really passionate about and homes we're working in as well to see the connection, and also just the kind of glide path that we're trying to make, where we're hoping in the coming years to get more involved in weatherization work as well. But I want to try to make this as casual as possible. So if at any point you want to stop me, feel free to. But I do encourage people to, maybe if you're open to it, it's very possible I'm going to cover it anyways. And so it's totally up to you, but just know that I'll try to be as efficient and try to cover all the bases as possible. But I do really enjoy answering questions, so feel free to at any point. But again, as Nikki was saying, Community Homeworks, we're a relatively new organization in the community. We've only been around for about 15 years. This is our 15th anniversary this year. We've really had a lot of explosive growth in the last 3 to 4 years, really post-pandemic. We in 2020, we had 2 full-time staff members. We have 14 staff now. We had about a $225,000 budget. This year is going to be close to $2 million. We continue to see, record year-over-year growth in terms of the amount of work that we're doing with homeowners. And part of that is just because of the demand that our community has for support and need of help. Again, Community Homeworks, we're a nonprofit here based in the city of Kalamazoo. As Nikki said, we recently expanded countywide last fall, which was a big goal of ours. So we are countywide in Kalamazoo. And we specifically really focus on 2 things that we've been known for since the beginning: home repair and empowering education. We try to make it as easy and mission focused as possible for people kind of get their arms around to understand what we do. So this is a picture here of our founder, Sean Wright. I'm not sure if any of you know Sean at all. He now owns his own HVAC company that's very passionate about work in more sustainable practices and reducing our carbon footprint. So it's definitely a passion of his, and you can see that passion really woven in the very early days of our founding. But Sean owns a company now called Home Energy Solutions.
Yeah.
And does great work with his company. But Sean and his partner, Emily Wright, they were both AmeriCorps volunteers with Habitat for Humanity. And they really just started to notice just something that really bothered them. They were building these from scratch, beautiful, energy efficient homes in our core neighborhoods. And then across the street or right next to it, they would see a house that was condemned that a family used to live in, that are these beautiful historic homes that were sitting vacant and deteriorating. And they just thought to themselves, like, what's causing this? Like something feels off about it. The more that they started to research and look into it, they just really realized that more often than not, it was just like 1 or 2 things that snowball that caused that house to go offline and displace that family. And so they ended up founding Community Homeworks. It started with a $25,000 grant from the city. And it was really part of them recognizing that there's this missing middle of homeowners who people assume just that because you're low income, that means that you're a renter or you're homeless, or you're a couch surfer. And their case was to make and show and prove that there are thousands of people in Kalamazoo County who own a home who are very vulnerably economically distressed. And they founded the organization, and it's a great example of an organization that had this social entrepreneurship mindset, where they saw a problem, they found a solution, and they went for it. And it's just exciting to see how much they've grown. In terms of our core services, I mentioned that our main flagship work that we do as an organization is our critical home repair program, where we actually go out into homes and do repair. We have an in-house construction team, but we also sub out to a number of pre-vetted contractors, about 15 to 20 of those that we work with on all of our projects. We provide that empowering education. We do 40 to 50 different courses per year. Nikki talked about the electrical course I went to recently, but everything from how to change a handle to a toilet to how to add a ceiling fan. And we really try to do some pretty practical repair topics, but we also do kind of more broadly, hey, let's understand how electrical systems work, or let's understand how a plumbing system in a home works. And the goal with that is that we don't anticipate that every single person who comes to our class is going to want to walk away and start demolishing walls. But we hope that at the bare minimum, if nothing else, that person who's a homeowner has more confidence that when somebody that they hired as a contractor comes into their home, that they know how to ask the right questions and they can make sure that they're not being taken advantage of. And then the third thing that we do that we're really proud of is we do navigation support. So we can't serve everybody who calls us for help. Not everybody is income eligible. You know, sometimes there might be a reason where it's a type of scenario that we can't help them with. And so we do our best to try to match them with help and support if we're unable to do it. So we train our staff really extensively on supporting. So kind of what's coming next. The next thing in our progression is we're launching a lending tool program. And so the idea is that, you know, one of the missing pieces in our continuum is that if we teach you how to do it and you see this $140 drill that we're using in class, how unfortunate it is if you want to jump in and do that in your home, but you can't afford to go get the drill or rent the drill. So we're aiming for a ribbon cutting in August or September to launch our like trial run 6-month period of the lending tool program. We're actually in the final stages of interviewing people who are going to be our lending tool manager. So we're really excited that we finally have the funding to hire that person full time to do that work in our community. Something that's a labor of love of mine from a personal family experience is we are going to be working with that lending tool manager. They're going to help us also get off the ground a new smoke detector CO detector program where basically people don't have to go through our whole application process to get 10-year smoke and CO detectors installed in every floor of their home. We too often have situations where we just by hapstance realize that there's carbon dioxide leaking into a home with families. We've had situations where even me personally, I live in a home that was built in 1946. Last January, my family had a pretty significant carbon dioxide leak. And if we hadn't had that carbon dioxide detector in our basement, there's no doubt in my mind that my family wouldn't have waken up the next morning. So we're excited to hopefully launch that at the end of 2024, early 2025. And then weatherization has been something that we've been trying to find the bandwidth and the funding that's sustainable to make sure that that's injected into our future as well. So we're hoping, you know, in the next year to two that we can hopefully start making way with that with some grant support as well. Homeowner retention. So when people think about like the housing crisis, you know, you hear that word used a lot, housing crisis. You know, a lot of times people think about like apartments as part of that equation or building new homes. But the reality is that homeowner retention is pretty critical to that because it's kind of you know, it's a never ending trying to catch up game if you don't keep the people who have existing housing in their existing housing. Because they're going to be competing with the people who don't have housing who need it and are struggling to find it. And so it's a very integral part to the housing ecosystem is to keep people who have homes or have a place to live in that place. And also, let's be honest with ourselves, urban core communities like ours have a significant aging housing stock. Does anybody want to take a guess what the average age of a household we served last year was? How old the home was?
50 years.
50. Okay. Any other guesses? All right. Well,
75?
100.
100. Okay. All right.
I said 70. I was muted though.
Okay. Well, the answer is the average age of a house last year that we served was between 96 and 97 years old. And
Jeez.
so we have a significant aging housing stock crisis impending that's about to happen. And the reality is that if we don't stay on top of that as a community, it's going to make the housing crisis that we're in right now look weak because you're going to have hundreds, if not thousands of homes that are, just a couple minimal repairs away from, coming off the grid. And it's really unfortunate because they don't, as you well know, they don't build homes like they used to. And these are often beautiful historic homes, homes that have had rich histories in our community, and in some cases, dozens of families that lived in them. And, there's an opportunity for them to exist for 100 more years, but they need care. And the unfortunate reality is that in many cases, people who are disproportionately in the older homes are people who are really struggling to keep them functioning because they are more expensive. And then the other part of it too is like it's a great return on investment if we're just talking about that too. I mean, last year we worked and served 233 families. And if you can just envision in your head like driving down a street, a typical city block, and how many homes you see on that city block, you might have to drive for a decent amount of time before you would pass 233 homes. And that's how many homes that we served last year and how many families we helped stabilize their situation in their home. And so think how much money it would cost to build 233 new homes or build an apartment complex that could house 233 families. It would cost tens of millions of dollars. And does anybody want to guess like the average amount that we're typically spending in a home to help keep a family in their home? Just on average? Any guesses?
30,000.
30,000? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, 20,000.
20,000? Okay.
Rick is guessing 10,000.
10,000? So the answer is anywhere between $2,500 to $7,500 is typically what it takes to keep a family in their home. Now that is a fantastic ROI on homeowner retention, because sometimes it's amazing that it could be something as simple as a drain clean that cost $160, because we see it in some situations where a family would forgo spending $160 because they don't have it or they're spread that thin, and then their basement floods with sewage, and then the water heater and the furnace go offline because they're damaged, and then there's water damage and mold damage, and all that could have been spared with $160, right? So what we're doing is we're taking a proactive approach to try to tackle those issues before they become bigger and snowball. Best way I explain it is I use that analogy of like a sinking ship, right? There's a hole in the boat, and there's a lot of really great organizations out there that are needed because we need people who are emptying the buckets of water, and doing those immediate things that they need to get immediate help. But the thing I'm really proud of that we do is we're the one that's plugging the hole. We're stopping the ship from continuing to take on water. And so, that's powerful as well. A couple really neat and new initiatives that we've launched that I'm proud of that I would argue are tied to the great work that you all are doing. So I'll kind of start backwards. I'm going to skip the universal application part, but historic preservation. It is incredibly expensive to maintain a home in a historic district and keep it up to those specifications. And the irony is that sometimes because of the lack of not doing it, because of the expense, it deteriorates to a point that you can't do anything about it until you're basically out of your home. And so we have a historic preservation grant pilot that's actually won state awards last year that is intended to help homeowners that are in historic districts with defer those costs. We also have a new partnership with the city of Kalamazoo on code enforcement. The thing that's really messed up about code enforcement is that the irony is that if you're not keeping up the exterior of your home, it's really boils down to two things. Either you're physically unable to do it, or you can't financially do it, or maybe sometimes both. And so the response to that communities do, which there's not really another alternative at the moment for most municipalities, but they fine you, they cite you. And so then when you don't pay it, then you get fined more until you do it. Well, that doesn't solve your problem if you can't afford to do it in the first place. So we have a new pilot with the city where we work directly with their code enforcement team. And if they refer a household to us, and once that family can show that they're in our queue working with us on their application, the citing is paused. No fines are incurred. And until we get to their house, even if it takes us a year to get to it, they're not fined. And then we actually help solve the problem. And then the last one is we have a new Safe Start program. That's a program that's for expectant parents or households with small children. And the idea is that instead of having to put them through the whole rigmarole of like federal paperwork that can be really burdensome and time consuming, and the documentation provided, it enables us to use kind of more flexible funding that we fundraise for, that we can get into that home right away for that household. So anyways, our case, like the number one case is we want our community to be healthy and safe in their homes. We also want to create lifelong homeownership. We know what impact it has on intergenerational wealth and families when they have stable long-term housing. We also want people to garner the skills and the confidence to be able to tackle things on their own. Have the Nickies of the world that show up to a class and feel empowered to take on challenges. But the thing that I'm most proud about is in the city of Kalamazoo, especially, there's still a huge family income disparity and family wealth disparity. And a lot of that's tied to home ownership, and especially between white families and families of color. And so it is even more critically important that, especially for families of color, that we're able to keep them in their household to maintain that home and also inject equity in that home so it becomes even worth even more. I put climate change on here. That's something that we take seriously. When we install our appliances, we really do our best to make sure that they're the highest energy efficiency appliances that we can afford to do that work for that household. And our staff is, consistently looking for ways to try to, weatherize that home in work that we're already doing. We also, we talked about that stable environment. So many of the homes, about 40% of the homes that we serve have kiddos in them. And you can see how that boils over into school and issues if you don't have a stable home. We also just recognize like how much of a peace of mind it is. I mean, any of you, I could just ask you to raise your hand. How many of you have had to have somebody come to your house because of some repair issue that's major, like electrical or plumbing or HVAC? I would bet just about every person's hand is going to go up here. And imagine how stressful you were in that moment when it happens. And then imagine what it would be like if for some reason that you had to wait weeks and think about it and go weeks before you could tackle that issue and you saw it getting worse and worse and worse and damaging other things in your home. It's really stressful. It's really, really stressful. And so we can kind of help minimize trauma and uncertainty because we're helping keep people in their homes instead of them getting temporarily or permanently displaced. And we're preserving and strengthening our neighborhoods, right? I mean, there are so many homes that we've worked in that I can guarantee you would be sitting boarded up or would be demolished. And all these families that would be, basically homeless if we didn't do the work that we do. Somebody asked, where do we hold our classes? So we hold them in the Edison neighborhood at our headquarters. It's 810 Bryant Street. And so one of the things that Nikki asked me to do is kind of like make the connection between our work and reducing carbon footprint and the work that we're trying to do to combat climate change and in our world. And something maybe some of you have heard me in some previous presentations talk about is that I think the thing that's really concerning to me about how things are coming down, especially from like Washington and funding, is that there's these millions and millions of dollars that are coming down to provide like a once in a generation opportunity to combat climate change. But they're really trying to focus on low-income homeowners, and God bless them. But the thing that's concerning to me is that there are so many homeowners that are not anywhere near close, who are some of the most economically distressed people that would be ready for any of these weatherization things that the federal funding would provide. And that's because there's so many things that need to happen on the front end before they would be ready. And we need to have a conversation with like our local, state, federal officials and employees to help them understand this. And I'm going to give a couple examples of where this could impact things. So you see this picture here of this stairway that goes down to the basement. In this particular scenario, when we came to this home, they had a catastrophic flooding situation. And these stairs, every single stair except for maybe the top two, were so deteriorated they were like non-existent. When our team came in there to replace the HVAC equipment in the basement, they had to even just to go down and inspect it, they had to put a ladder down from the top door down and climb down because there were no existing stairs. They had deteriorated to a point that they had just fallen off. And so this is like a really good example. If you want to put a high energy appliance in it or a heat pump into the house and you need to get into the basement, well, what do you do for the household where it literally isn't safe to get down there to do it, right? We've seen a number of situations where we've had instances where we've had attics we've needed to work in where there was no like safe crawl space ladder to get up to it. So we had to install a ladder to the attic before we could do duct work or insulation. And so a lot of times there are significant things that need to be taken to get to the space to work on. So that was one thing I wanted to share. I think I kind of frozen up. There we go. It's kind of gross, but does anybody know what this is?
Bed bugs.
Bed bugs. Ugh. Yeah. So right now, out of the probably like, I don't know, 30 or 40 projects we're working on, we probably have 5 or 6 households right now where there is a family that needs something done in their home. And the only reason we're not able to do it is because we know that the house is infected with a pest infestation that makes it such that we can't send our team or technicians into the home to solve. And that's just right now. And so again, you talk about like preliminary barriers you need to take care of. You're not going to send any weatherization technicians into a house to weatherize homes that have infestations that need to be taken care of.
Chris,
And
in a situation like that, do you pay for the tenting to kill the bed bugs?
yeah, so
Okay.
some of the countywide funding that we just received enables us to hire long-term remediation. So a number of these homes that we're working on, like basically we just keep getting updates from the pest company, and they give us like an invoice every month and keep going back to the house until the issue is resolved. So
Okay.
so this is a newer thing, but you know, this was part of it was just because these were things we were observing, right? We had too many situations where we couldn't help a person get a new furnace because we knew that they were infested with roaches and the HVAC technicians refused to go in the home, right? So now we have that funding to help people remediate those issues so that we can get into the home safely. Yeah, I'm sorry, Ann, I saw you had a hand up.
In situations like this, who works with the family in order to help them understand what basics of cleanliness they need to continue to
Yeah.
do so that this doesn't happen again?
Yeah, it's really tricky, but we have a really great programming team. We actually have a case manager that works with every household. Um, and then we have a construction manager that works with our subcontractors. So you know, we work in tandem with the pest company to do education while they're in the home. But then we also typically will follow up just to kind of reinforce them to say, hey, you know, like, you know, the pest person mentioned that this needs to happen. And so we'll say, you know, we want to make sure that this like lasts. So like, you know, before we come in there to do the work, we need you to do this and we need you to do that. And so we try to like kind of help coach and educate along that way. And it doesn't always work. I mean, we have one right now where you know, no matter how many times we brought it up, like we can tell them exactly what's causing the roach problem, and they just aren't doing anything about it. I mean, the house had, we could see it was like leftover items from Thanksgiving, you know, and this was in like January or February, and it was still on their kitchen counter. And the thing is like if you're trying to kill pests, if you're giving them a live, yummy source of things to feed on, they're not going to go to the bait stations. They're going to go where it's the fresh, yummy trash, you know? And so it is tricky sometimes. So here's the other thing, and I know I've had a conversation with Mark a number of times about this too, but I think that the greatest threat to weatherization for low-income people is housing's roofs. They are painfully expensive right now. When I started 4 years ago, typical roof we could probably replace for somewhere between $9,000 to $11,000. Now you're probably looking at more like in the $15,000 to $18,000 range. It is prohibitively expensive, especially for nonprofits to tackle roofing right now. And the reality is like sometimes we're our struggle because we recognize that, you know, do we really want to spend and invest a lot of money in a home if we know it's just going to get further damaged by a leak in the roof? And we unfortunately don't have that level of funding or funding specified for a full roof replacement. So we do depend on partners. But what we see is that a lot of our grant partners, you know, you get $100,000 grant, that's not going to get you much mileage when you're, it sounds like a lot of money, but when you're doing things like roofing, you know, you're really that might be enough for maybe 6 roofs. That's a huge impetus. I think a key for the question about the why are roofs so expensive. It's just inflationary pressures, labor pressures, insurance costs that have gone up. Um, it's just kind of all of the above. Um, and I think part of it too is just supply and demand. During the pandemic, people like many of us who have reasonable incomes or savings, we were getting COVID dollars. And so we were just doing things that were on our like to-do list. And so we were, replacing our decks or adding decks or, getting our roofs done or getting our driveways repaved. And it wasn't like we were waiting till we had to. A lot of us were doing it proactively because we just ran into extra money. And so unintentionally, what we all did is put strain on the labor market and made it so hyper competitive that contractors could charge a lot more for the same work they were doing before. So hopefully that kind of explains what. I'll just give you an idea when we look at our materials list. So if I were to look at my budget for the supplies and materials from 2020, and if I were to look at the same line item comparison for the same number of homes in 2024, we as an organization are paying somewhere between 20 or 30% more than we were before. So anyway, so I'm gonna kind of speed up a little bit here. Because I want to be respectful of time and make sure that we have time to ask any questions if you but critical home repair, we're not a 24/7 service. You can't call us at 2 a.m. and have us be there. We do try to give our team a pretty good work-life balance, and our team is still pretty small. But we put people in the queue, and when somebody's in the queue, unless it's something like catastrophic life or death, where we have to move them to the front of the line, we try to be as fair with people as possible. So there is usually a wait list. So we avoid the term emergency repair for that reason. It's got to be in the lived environment. So we're not doing like outhouses or sheds or garages. We're not fixing people's sidewalks. It's got to be like in the space that makes sure that they can live safely. And then we really focus on things that are imminent health or safety issues. So what does that mean? It means like, okay, I've been wanting to replace my cabinets in my kitchen. Okay, we're not going to do that. But if the cabinet is about to fall down and hit somebody in the head, yeah, we'll be there. For eligibility, we as an organization almost entirely serve people under 80% AMI, area median income, or about 200% below the poverty line. And that might surprise people. If you're a single person living in a home, how high your income could be. I think the latest was like mid 50s for a single person. And Kalamazoo County residents now, they have to be the homeowner listed on the deed. Again, we are laser focused on that. I know a lot of times people are asking us to go into a rental unit where there's a landlord, but there's a reason a landlord charges. Like it's their responsibility to make sure that tenant is healthy and safe. And let's see here. Application, we have a team that works with them every step of the way on the application. When they call us, we kind of do a pre-check form to make sure it's even worth their time to do the application. And we try to help them even just like getting the deed. We go down to the county's office if they need help. Funding sources, I mentioned to you, we're almost a $2 million organization this year, and we depend on a lot of support from things like the federal government from HUD, Housing and Urban Development, with CDBG grants. Thank you if you live in Kalamazoo County, because the Housing for All millage that you help pay for helps support the work that we do. So a lot of sources like that, but we also depend on a lot of family foundations like the Stryker Johnson Foundation or Kalamazoo Community Foundation, and just people who donate to us as well. It makes a huge difference. And then people often ask, like, how do people get referred to us? We go out and actually do about 40 presentations per year to different referral sources. So everything from like school social workers to groups of nurses to the 211 call center people. So we really go out there to try to make sure that people know what services we provide or not, and how to refer people. And so there's that. Talked a little bit about our education programming. We'll skip that. Just in terms of like outcomes last year, mentioned that we actually completed work so we made whole 125 homes. We were working on in some various capacity 233 homes. this is the average income from last year, just $31,000 per home, which is pretty. We serve a lot of seniors, a lot of households with children, and homes with individuals that are identified as individuals with disabilities. We track all this data too, so at any point in real time, we can tell you exactly, per neighborhood or by AMI level. But you can see here the vast majority of where people we're serving, almost 2/3 are people who are the most economically distressed homeowners in the county.
How do you get the 60% over 80%? Is 6% over 80 if your cutoff's 80%?
So that's probably from our Safe Start program, because I mentioned how
Okay.
we kind of, it's less questions asked kind of a thing. So a lot of times if we'll have like a family where it's like a family of four and they both parents work or the parent works and they're like $400 over income. So it enables us to use our flexible funding to support them. But if there's people over 80% AMI, it's probably very little over, or sometimes it's like a situation where like there's a parent who are like working overtime, and it's like they don't normally work overtime, but for whatever reason in that one period it put them over income, but they know that they're not going to be over income when they stop the overtime. So it's usually situations like that. But
Okay.
anyways, I'll stop there.
Well, I do have a question. Are you your team, are you also training? I mean, are you working with a diverse team of ethnic diverse people and training them?
Yeah. We actually I'm really proud we had a partnership. So the lending tool program right now we're working on in tandem with the minority contractors co-op that's trying to form on that. So that's a labor of love for that group. And then also we for the last, I guess it's like 2 or 3 cycles we've worked with, so there's a group that's managed through an organization called Room 35 that does consulting, and they have a minority Michigan residential builders license training that we host here at our offices for them. And so we open up our space, let them use us for like a 2-week period for the night courses. They come in here every Wednesday night for almost a whole season. And so we're trying really hard. And the great thing about that is because then we have that relationship with those individuals and we can say, hey, have you ever considered becoming a subcontractor for us? Or, we pay market rate, we pay quickly. And so, yeah, we're very intentional about that. In fact, one member of our team was actually a participant at one point, and he was so helpful on the project that we asked, hey, do you want to come work for us and learn how to do the work we're doing? And so, so we try to walk the walk pretty well.
Great.
Yeah.
Steve, you were next.
Yeah, thanks so much, Chris. I guess my question is kind of it's a context question, I guess. I know in some cities, Habitat for Humanity does the kind of work that you've described here, and I'm wondering, do you collaborate or compete with other community organizations, or are you, really the only game in town?
Yeah, so I would say it varies on the community. Every habitat is a little bit different. I think, our local habitat just got brand new leadership. They've had a lot of staff turnover, but I think like they're working really hard to kind of like pinpoint what they're focusing on, but they definitely do critical home repair. And I think they're kind of examining what level they want to do. But typically in my 4 years here, in addition to them doing the new builds, they tend to do less but more significant repair projects. So what we notice a lot with Habitat is that they would do like a full kitchen rehab or a full bathroom rehab. So they might, instead of doing 125 completed homes, they might do 20, but they might do really transformational flip. They also Habitat this last year had a really cool partnership with Building Blocks, where they had a contract where they were helping Building Blocks do things like porch repairs or replacements and like front doors or broken windows. So it was very much like front of house, outside type things that they were doing. But I think they're just doing a really good job right now of kind of doing a self-examination, kind of figuring out who and what they want to be. My take is like, if I had 10 times the money and 10 times the staff, there would still be a wait list and there would still be more work than we could handle. And so my take is like, I think, hey, if anybody wants to do this work, there's plenty of demand and need. And in fact, I think that's all the more reason why we do a really good job of staying in communication with each other and talk and compliment. And, sometimes we do work together where we say, hey, we'll do the bed bug remediation, but can you help us with the furnace because that's going to cost so much. So we're constantly in talk with each other about households. Um, and in fact, KNHS, we have a relationship with them. So this new grant that we have for Kalamazoo Township, we worked it out in that grant where KNHS is going to do all the exterior expensive things, and we're going to do all the guts inside of the house. And so in those home projects, we worked on a universal application with them so that we could avoid the homeowner having to apply two separate places, for work that they need. So I think like it's a really good place we're in right now where the housing players are all talking really well with each other and playing well in the sandbox and reducing silos. And but my take is like, shoot, if there's somebody who wants to do this work, the more the merrier, because it's going to take a lot to to respond to the demand that's out there. And we're trying to grow as fast as we can to try to prevent the need from people to duplicate the work that we're doing, but it's just too much, it's a lot. It's like one of those things, like sometimes we're even trying to figure out the balance of marketing because like we can sometimes market ourselves to the point that we can't keep up. So, yeah.
Okay. Tom?
I guess my question is, uh, if KCCC were in a position to provide assistance to you, what would you like to see?
Yeah.
What's your biggest need?
Yeah. Are you talking about like specifically like if that like EPA grant came through?
Well, no, anything. I mean, if you need a volunteer receptionist, or if you need,
Yeah.
somebody to contact somebody else that's in our affiliate organization, something like that.
Yeah. Well, I would say too, like low-hanging fruit things that I'm really excited about is like typically in the last 15 years, we've really never had volunteers except for the volunteer instructors that do instructor work. So if you ever know of anybody who's really passionate about like weatherization stuff, but stuff that like uh, a homeowner that's like starting from scratch who doesn't have a lot of technical skills, like what are like low-hanging fruit things that a homeowner could do or try in their home to like reduce their carbon footprint, reduce their utility bills. We're looking for instructors like that, but we also have a new position. It's called the event host position. And so what we're hoping is that to help our team out, we want to have a volunteer come in to each class or workshop we offer to help us like greet people, help us get the space ready, get coffee ready, snacks, and just kind of like help us be host to that person because sometimes we're so busy getting the instructor ready or, getting the materials ready. So we have that new volunteer position, but also when our lending tool program opens, we're going to need a team of volunteers who are really passionate about working with people to help them check out things and return things and, maybe show them how it works a little bit if they're handy. So we're going to need a group of about 6 to 10 people that work with our lending tool manager. So those would be great ways. And the other thing too, we just got a grant from the Kalamazoo Community Foundation's Environmental Fund to help us with, we're going to have this handy at home series. We call it Green Edition. And so those will be the idea behind those workshops that will be coming out soon is that they're things that homeowners can do with little to no skill, but are not, they're not like, hey, let's learn about solar panels, right? It's more like, hey, let's talk about how you can how you can work on your windows to, reduce, the energy loss in the winter. So how do you change your screens? How do you caulk and do all those kind of things? Or it might be like, what things should you know about your furnace and water heater that reduce the efficiency of it? So like, do you know how to clean out your water heater and flush that once a year? Do you understand about furnace filters and why that matters to efficiency? So it'll be things that are like more practical green strategies for their home, but there's also some like I think we have a couple things planned with like, I'm not 100% sure. I think it's wild ones, but that we've had in the past. We've done a couple rain barrel classes, composting classes and stuff like that. So we're trying to do
Okay.
some of those as well. So those would be really fun ones to like volunteer with, if that's something you're passionate about.
Do you have a contact for if somebody wanted to volunteer, who to get in touch with?
Yeah, you're welcome to get in touch with me and I can just pass it along, or we just have an info@communityhomeworks.org email, would be great. And then they'll pass it along as well. And just we're just getting all these up and running. So, definitely we appreciate your patience too, because it might be a couple weeks or months before we do like the orientation for them, but we'll definitely add you to the list and we'd love to have you come join us and volunteer with us if you can.
Now, the other thing is you were mentioning all these classes. I heard about the electrical class on now Kalamazoo.
Yeah.
So are you listing all your classes like still on those or?
Yeah, they're trying to
Okay.
keep up with those as best as possible. And like I say, I can send you the PDF of like all the ones coming up this quarter. But just know that
Okay.
that we're kind of coasting right now with our classes. We're really excited. We just got a new education manager. It's the first time that person's been in a full-time role. And then she just hired 2 new staff members to work with her. So we are relaunching what's called the Handy at Home series. And so there'll be a pink edition. So it's like only classes. And then we'll have a lunch and learn class. So instead of them being at night, we'll have a periodic one that was like the one you attended, Nikki. We'll have the green edition one, which is like weatherization. And then we're hoping to do like a silver edition that will come out in 2025. And then that's for seniors. And then we also are hoping in 2025 to launch kids and family programming to kind of inspire a next generation to have the confidence to do this kind of work too. So,
Okay, great. Susan.
Yes, thank you, Chris. This is wonderful, much appreciated.
yeah.
And I missed the very beginning of your talk. So I was just wondering if you have any focus on electrification, such as moving toward electric stoves instead of gas and heat pumps.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, not yet. But that's definitely on our radar as and kind of our long-term plans. One of the things that we talk about, like kind of getting things stabilized on the front end, for a typical low-income person, like electrification right now is not necessarily something that they're going to see immediate impact on things like utility bills. We're kind of at that nexus where we got to get to the point where electrification is more affordable than natural gas, and especially in these older homes. And so yeah, and the thing is too is like I think the tricky part for a lot of homeowners we work with is that they're in such a point of desperation. They're just like, I just want heat. I don't care how it happens. And so we just need to get ourselves to a point where we can figure out how we can fully weatherize those homes so that they do see, economic benefits from making that electrical shift. So yeah, it's definitely something we're looking at long term, but I think that's a little ways out.
Okay, because my understanding is that heat pumps do cost less. But yeah, right. Their initial cost may be more. It's a matter of the payback period, perhaps.
Yeah.
But they're already outselling the natural gas and oil furnaces in this country, so that's certainly encouraging.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
yeah, anyway, thank you.
And
Well, that's what New York said, that when they made the law that all new heat pumps and gas stoves and all of that have to be electrified, is they were saying if we start in New York, it's going to be a big enough industry that the prices are going to drop countrywide.
Yeah.
And so apparently maybe that philosophy is working.
Well, and one of the things we encountered too is like at one point we were really prioritizing to do high efficiency wall mounted units. And what we found is that the homeowners weren't maintaining them. And so then you spend a lot of money on these appliances that are very high efficiency, more expensive, but ideally should be saving them money on their utility bill. And if they're not maintained and flushed or maintenance on a regular basis, like they were lasting in some cases, like where you have a unit that should have been lasting 15, 20 years that weren't lasting sometimes like, 5, 6 years. And so like that's the other part of it too, is that maintenance part. And that's why the part of our education is so critical as well. Because, you know, we when you make that investment in people's homes, you really want it to last for them too. And so that's something that we kind of struggled with too when we were making that shift entirely. Um, but we're figuring it out. You know, we have a input advisory group of people who are current and former participants, and they really kind of help guide us about how far is too far. You know, when we can try things and experiment, and if it's working or not.
Okay. And
Well, I'm commenting because I have a neighbor across the street and their home has deteriorated, and I see really what you need to do, Chris, is to develop a program that includes homeowners in education on what are the basic things they need to do to maintain their home. This is just a constant
Mhm.
thing, like clean out the eaves and make sure the downspouts are attached so the water runs away from the house,
Right, right.
or
Absolutely.
uh,
Absolutely.
cleaning the windows and making sure they're in good repair, and checking on the roof. And you know, the my neighbors have moved to another area, to a rehabbed home in the downtown on Summit Street,
Okay.
but they still don't have the skills to maintain the home. And I fear that even though this has been recently, that home that they moved into and bought has been repaired, they don't have the skills and no knowledge in order to be able to keep it up.
Mhm. That's such a great point. You know, I mean, it's and that's the part is just like part of it is just like the culture and the confidence, right? Like I didn't grow up in a household where I had a parent or a figure in my life that gave me the confidence to do even like hanging a picture. You know, you know, until a few years ago, I was nervous if I was trying to hang pictures, you know, and here I am, I run a nonprofit that does home repairs, you know, and I think part of that is that, you know, I really want to create an organization that's inspiring like the next generation to have the confidence to swing a sledgehammer and like repair a wall or change an outlet or, you know, change a handle on a toilet. And like what you're describing is that we've kind of let that go, right? Like we've lost that as a society where, you know, it's so easy just to pick up the phone and call somebody, but we forget the fact that like for a low income person, like they don't have that ability, right? I have that ability, but you know, low income people don't have that ability. And so the next best thing that we can do, aside from trying to lift those people out of poverty, is to like help garner that culture and the skills to be able to maintain their home, like you're saying. And you know, one really interesting thing that kind of is a tidbit off of what you're saying. We've been having some conversations like with Bethany Christian Services and some of the organizations that work with refugee populations that have been coming to the area. They are finding that a lot of their social workers are reaching out to us to say, hey, can we get a list of those classes? Because so many of the refugees that are coming to the area, they were in refugee camps for years. They have no idea how to maintain a home. And so it's a huge culture shift for these individuals who are moving to our community. And so for those people, especially, you'll really need help in like garnering those skills and confidence to do the work in their home because a lot of these individuals who are refugees coming to the area, they have really good paying jobs with benefits. Like they're, you know, they're getting jobs in high skill manufacturing and those kind of things, and they're acquiring homes, and but they have in many cases the inability to understand how to maintain that home effectively.
Deb,
Hi, Chris. I'd like to thank you at so many different levels, not just from helping people maintain their homes and alleviate homelessness in that way, but from the social aspects, even of families. I understand you see things when you go into homes, and these people that you have that are working with the families to even get them to just not leave guns sitting out where little kids can grab
Mhm.
them.
Mhm.
And just the extensive work. Rick and I attended some of your workshops very early on and really enjoyed them. And I'm also wondering if there are stores that are donating money and times and services that we could support in any way to encourage them to keep it up.
Yeah. You know, they a lot of the big box stores in different capacities, a lot of times they have inventory that they're about to just, you know, sell to like secondhand places or like surplus places. And so but we've had to get pretty careful about that because we had to do like a major donation purge because it got so stacked deep in our headquarters that we kind of had to reel back. But I know for the lending tool program, what our plan is when we hire the new lending tool manager, we're hoping to send that person out to go meet with the big box stores and say, hey, here's a list of all the things that we're going to do in the first phase of acquisition. Could you either heavily discount or donate any of these items? And I think we'll have pretty good luck with that with them. And so I'll have to get back to you on that one about how that goes. But yeah, we've been pretty lucky when we've had needs with getting help. We've had a few times where we've had a big project, like a bathroom project, and the shower insert is like $2,500 or something, and they'll cut $500 or $600, $700 off the cost for us. So they do come through once in a while, but it's usually more as like a kind of a random one-off kind of thing we're asking them for.
Well, kudos.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank
Appreciate
you so
it.
much.
Yeah, thank you all for your interest in this and the time
Well,
today.
I have a couple of questions here. Okay,
Yeah.
one, with your tool lending program, are you going to coordinate with the library?
Yeah, so
Okay.
the group that's been meeting with us in this like preliminary planning, the minority contractor co-op, it had a representative from the city, it had a representative from the library, it had just different stakeholders. And so like one of the things that we're trying to learn from the library is like, what lessons can we learn about how you inventory and do checkout and all those kind of things. And so one of the things we're going to have the new manager explore is like opportunities where maybe we could have some kind of a centralized inventorying system where we could see what the library has available and the library could look up really quickly and see what we have available. And maybe the Edison Neighborhood Association has a lending tool program, we can see what they have, so that way at any time people can see who has what. But we'll have to figure that out. That'll take some time to probably sort out.
Okay, and then the other thing I was curious about, if I'm a qualified homeowner, can I ask you just to come in and inspect and tell me everything that has to be done versus actually doing it at that point?
Yeah, that's a super great question. So one of the things I forgot to mention this, I think one of the neatest things that we actually do is not really something that we advertise very much or very well. So every house that we work on, we have a licensed builder that does inspections, and they go in and do kind of like the equivalent of a 100-point inspection like you would do on your car. And so they walk in, and so the homeowner might say, my water heater is not working. Can you come inspect that? So we go in to look at that first because that's what they reached out about. But we might see, hey, there's electrical outlets hanging out of the wall and you have a 2-year-old running around. Or, hey, we noticed that like there's this like part of the ceiling that looks like it's about to fall down. Would you like us to like look at, see if we have the funding available to tackle that this year? Or could we at least list this out for you so that we can work with you next year in the next grant funding cycle to do the next phase? So we actually, like, we say to them, like, if it was us, this is what we would do first, second, third, fourth, and then when we get done, we go back and do a post inspection, and that allows the homeowner to sign off on it. But that gives us the chance to say to the homeowner, okay, we did this work, but this is what's left to do. You're going to be eligible again for our services a year from today. Make sure to call us back and we'll come back and do, this next part. So that's a really cool part about it because it empowers that homeowner to know like what's going on in their home, right? Like they know these are like imminent threats, and these are things that you should keep an eye on that could be an issue down the road.
Okay, and then you were talking about, I think it's with the township maybe, where there's going to be indoor and outdoor work.
Mm-hmm.
So with the outdoor work, have you thought about working with KPEP at all? Because they can't go into houses, but they can do outside work.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, no, I don't. So KNHS Home Ownership Services, they're doing the exterior work. But I'll have to mention that to him as an idea. Maybe they are, I'm not sure, but that, you know, I know the one tricky thing is with a lot of these grants, we have to like, we can't just work with anybody. So like we have to go through like a very thorough like federal or like grant application process to make sure that they're like licensed and um provide insurance documentation and a vouch for, you know, that their employees are trained at a certain level and those sort of things. So there is a certain vetting process. But yeah, next time I talk to Beth, I'll mention that to her and see if she's
Yeah, because
out of
they
that.
have a training program, but they're not allowed into homes. They can only work outdoors. So
Okay, that's good to know. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'll have to
he gave a presentation somewhere at one point.
real quick. If there's no other questions, I'll leave you with one little interesting tidbit because I promised Nikki I would try to gear it towards your passion. So so 10% of global greenhouse gas emissions come from construction and demolition of buildings. Okay. And so that's significant. And so basically, you know, even if all those new constructions were like operationally efficient, right? Because that is such a significant emitter, basically, even if you super weatherized a house, it would take time to compensate for that emissions that you're creating by creating a new structure and demolishing the old one. And so, you know, it really makes the case, I guess, of what I'm trying to say about preserving our existing housing stock. Because, you know, all that's going to go to a landfill, which is going to be on trucks, and it's going to have, you know, a significant carbon footprint by having to demolish that and rebuild something new. Whereas the alternative is weatherizing what exists, which is in some ways a very buttoned up structure, and avoiding that, you know, 10% impact, if you will, of everything that's being emitted. And so I just thought that was a really powerful statistic to share and really like a case for the work that we're doing to preserve our housing stock. And you're always welcome to reach out to us as well. And certainly would, you know, welcome any questions or and you know, the other thing I always like, I would be a bad executive director if I didn't say this, but you know, certainly we depend on the support of the community to do this work. And so if, you know, if you find a lot of passion and learning about the work that we're doing and stuff, we would certainly welcome your support as a donor or inviting us to come present to another group or something. Cause that's how the magic works, is just you know, continuing to encourage people to support our work and tell other people about the work that we're doing. So thank you.
Thank you.